The winter that took Hannah never truly left the valley, and tonight it had come to claim what was left.
The wood pile's empty. The fire won't last another hour, just like her last night.
Outside, his smokehouse still breathed a slow amber heat from its vents, working while he froze.
This heat could cure meat for months. Why can't it cure the cold inside me?
He held his hands over the embers, feeling the heat rise against the low ceiling.
If I built a loft right here, a bed above the smoke, I'd steal every degree.
The town would mock him for sleeping over a fire, but the dead don't care about dignity.
Hannah died waiting for a warm room that never came. I won't make the same mistake.
There was no time to debate. The valley's grim arithmetic gave him one choice. By daybreak, William Reeves was drawing a plan that would turn a smokehouse into the warmest bed in the valley. By noon, William had sketched a rough design, a sleeping platform braced above the smokehouse rafters. With a vent to let warmth rise and smoke escape, he dragged the first load of lumber from the barn, his breath clouding in the air as he crossed the snow. Outside the general store, Brian Caldwell spotted William struggling with the lumber.
Hey, Reeves, building a bed over your ham hocks. Gonna sleep like a ham.
A couple of townsmen chuckled behind him, but William didn't look up.
Let them laugh. Every board I nail is a nail in winter's coffin.
Through the afternoon, he hammered and sawed, the sound of mockery fading into the rhythm of work.
If the smoke rises, why can't the heat? It's just a matter of building a trap.
By dusk, the frame of the loft was visible through the smokehouse vents, a promise of warmth not yet proven. As darkness fell, he climbed down. The memory of Hannah's frozen face renewed his grip on the hammer. The next morning, he bored a vent through the roof and hung a weighted flap to control the draw.
If I get this wrong, I'll suffocate on my own smoke.
He hauled his straw mattress up the ladder, the frame groaning under his weight. Space was tight, barely enough to sit upright, but the air was already warmer than his cabin.
This might actually work. Maybe I won't freeze tonight.
That evening, he lit a small fire in the smokehouse pit, just enough wood to keep the embers alive. He climbed into the loft and sealed the hatch, leaving only the vent open to the night sky.
Warmth. Real warmth, seeping up through the boards. After 2 winters, I'd forgotten what it felt like.
Through the vent, he watched the thin smoke spiral upward, away from his bed. He didn't sleep easily. Every creak made him listen for smoke, but the cold no longer owned the night. The second night, the wind shifted. Smoke curled through the floor cracks instead of rising, and William woke, choking.
Smoke. Too much. The vent's not drawing right. Got to fix it now.
He scrambled down the ladder in the dark, coughing, and threw open the outer door to clear the air.
The flap's frozen half shut. Need to wedge it wider and pack those gaps.
For an hour, he worked by moonlight, stuffing rags and clay into the floor seams, adjusting the damper until the draw steadied. When he crawled back into the loft, the air was clean, but the cold had already crept in through his absence. The next morning, a store clerk mentioned seeing William's smoke-filled cough to the wrong man, Brian Caldwell.
Smoke sickness. That's what he's got. Sleeping over a fire will rot his lungs before spring.
Brian told it to everyone who'd listen, painting William's innovation as a slow suicide.
They think I am crazy, but this loft, fixed right, is the only thing between me and a frozen grave.
William spent the next day meticulously sealing every gap with clay and rags, adding a small damper to control the heat flow. That night, the loft was warm and smoke-free. He slept deeper than he had in 2 winters. Over the following days, the design held. He woke without frost on his blanket.
The meat's curing perfectly. If I can trade some, I might buy seeds for spring.
He loaded a sack of smoked pork belly and walked to the general store. But the storekeeper refused the meat, repeating Brian's claim of smoke contamination.
Contamination? The same smoke that cures their own hams? They just won't see past Brian's lie.
Without a market, his surplus was worthless.
Maybe I am a fool to think they'd ever accept this. But I am alive, and that counts for something.
He returned to the smokehouse, the warmth, its own quiet defense against a cold world. 5 nights later, a blizzard swallowed the valley whole. The wind, a living scream.
This is the real test. If the loft holds tonight, it'll hold anything.
He climbed down every 2 hours to feed the fire, nursing the embers like a man guarding a heartbeat. Upstairs, the loft stayed dry and warm, the smoke vent pulling steady despite the gale.
The whole valley's freezing, and I am warm on half the wood.
Across town, Brian's butcher shop had no such refuge. The cold seeped through the walls, freezing a whole side of beef solid and ruining half his hanging stock. By dawn, the storm had buried the valley.
It held. The blizzard spent itself against my walls, and I never shivered.
While the town dug out, William's smokehouse still breathed its slow amber heat, and inside, his meat cured, untouched by disaster. When he walked into the smokehouse the morning after the storm, the air was thick with a sweetness he hadn't expected.
This meat's curing faster than ever. The steady low heat, it's intense and even.
He took stock. Every rack was loaded, every cut perfectly smoked. He had more meat than he'd planned.
While they burned extra wood just to keep warm, my one fire gave me both heat and a winter's worth of food.
In town, other families were already counting their dwindling supplies, their meat spoiled by the deep freeze. His smokehouse loft, the object of ridicule, had become a fortress against hunger.
I have more than I can eat. But what good is a full larder if I can't share it?
The town saw a man sleeping with hogs. William saw a system that had turned a curse into a cure.
They'll see the truth eventually. Until then, this smokehouse keeps its secrets.
Outside, the valley still shivered. But inside the smokehouse, William Reeves had built more than a bed. He'd built an advantage. Word of William's full smokehouse crept through the valley. Some called it luck. Brian called it hoarding.
He's profiting while families starve. That smoke-cured meat is a lie.
Then one evening, a frantic knock came at his cabin door. Samuel Sanders stood shivering on the step, his 2 children clinging to his coat like shadows made flesh.
Mr. Reeves, I know what the town says, but my children haven't eaten in 2 days. Please, if you have anything.
Children's faces. Just like I imagined Hannah's before the end. No one helped us then. If I give him meat, Brian will call me a fool. If I don't, I am no better than the winter that killed Hannah.
I am not asking for charity. I'll work. I'll do anything. Just don't let them starve.
William's hand hovered on the doorframe, the warmth from the smokehouse at his back warring with the freezing air. He had once been the man they mocked. Now he was being asked to become something more or to close the door forever.
Get your children inside. Now.
He led them to the smokehouse, pulled a cured ham from the rack, and pressed it into Samuel's trembling hands.
This isn't charity. It's what should have happened for my own family when Hannah was dying.
Then he showed Samuel the loft, the vent, the damper, the sealed floor, and explained how one fire could do the work of 2.
Build this above your own shack and you'll never need to choose between warmth and food again.
They called you crazy, but this might save my children.
William gave him a simple charcoal sketch of the design, along with a promise to help with the building when the weather broke.
I'll repay you when I can. Every ounce.
The children's eyes, huge in thin faces, followed the meat like it was the first warmth they'd known in weeks. As the Sanders family left into the twilight, William watched from the smokehouse door, knowing the town's verdict was still out. But his own silence had been broken. By morning, Samuel Sanders' gratitude had become a story. Some saw charity, others saw a threat to their own judgment.
Spreading sickness isn't charity, it's negligence. I am calling a town meeting to end this.
Brian posted notice of a public debate to decide whether the Smokehouse loft was a danger to the valley. The town split. Those who mocked William now whispered questions they couldn't swallow.
After everything, they're going to put my bed on trial. Fine. Let them look.
Safety isn't a joke. I'll prove your smoke will choke the valley before it warms it.
The town hall filled with the smell of damp wool and suspicion. Every face turned toward the man who slept above his smokehouse.
I survived the winter. I can survive a room full of doubt.
Brian stood first, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had everything to lose. In the crowd, no one was certain anymore, except that the verdict would change them all.
Smoke doesn't rise clean, it seeps, it poisons, it burns. One stray ember, and that loft becomes a coffin.
William listened without flinching. When he stood, the room quieted.
My loft has kept me alive through the worst winter in memory. The smoke goes where I built it to go. Out, I've shared the meat cured by that same fire with a family who would have starved.
My children are alive today because of William Reeves. That meat was clean, and so is his invention.
The council members exchanged long glances, their earlier certainty eroding.
One good deed doesn't erase the danger. I demand a ban before someone dies.
But the crowd had heard enough. When the vote came, the council refused to condemn the Smokehouse loft, yet refused to endorse it either. William walked out into the cold, neither condemned nor vindicated. The town's silence heavier than any verdict. Inside, Brian Caldwell's warnings still hung in the air, but the cracks in his campaign were beginning to show. 3 days after the vote, a second cold snap descended on the valley with a vengeance.
Not again. The cold's seeping in faster than I can burn. Another night like this, and I am ruined.
By morning, half his hanging stock had frozen solid, the meat worthless. His reputation was spoiling alongside it. That evening, from his window, he saw the soft amber glow of William's smokehouse on the horizon, steady as a beacon.
He's never cold. His meat never freezes. That loft is winning while I freeze.
On the street, he overheard that Samuel Sanders had already started framing a loft onto his own shack, copying Reeves' design exactly.
Sanders? That beggar? If he can build one, then any fool with a hammer will be sleeping above their pigs. Now I am the town fool, my business is failing. And the worst part, I need that loft myself.
That night, as the frost crept across his floorboards, Brian stared at the empty ledger and realized pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. But the words were still lodged in his throat. The truth he couldn't yet force past his own stubborn tongue. By sunrise, Brian was already trudging through the drifts toward the smoke plume on the ridge, his pride a heavy pack on his back.
Every step feels like a hammer on my pride. But I've run out of hammer and I've run out of options.
William set down his axe. The sight of Brian Caldwell walking toward him striking him colder than the air.
He's come to finish what he started at the meeting.
Reeves, I was wrong about the smoke, about you. I need your help. My shop is freezing, my stock is dead, and my pride is the only thing that's kept me from asking sooner.
Why should I trust you now?
Because you and I both know what it's like to watch everything slip away. I lost my wife to this cold, same as you. I can't lose my shop too.
The words hung in the cold air between them, heavier than any verdict the town could hand down.
Tear, there's wood to split before we can frame.
William didn't gloat. He led Brian to the smokehouse table and slid over a creased charcoal sketch.
The weighted vent, the sealed floor, he engineered a lung for that building. I mocked a cure I didn't understand.
For a week, the two men worked in the bitter air behind Brian's shop, their breath and the sawdust mingling.
The damper's the heart of it. Angle it wrong, and you'll smoke yourself in your sleep.
No wonder my shop froze. I was fighting the cold with brute force while you were outsmarting it.
By the 7th day, The loft was finished, a perfect twin of the one on the ridge, its new boards still raw against the snow. That night, Brian climbed the ladder alone and felt the dry heat rising through the seams for the first time.
This warmth was worth more than my pride. How many years did I waste?
You weren't the first to doubt, but now you know the fire works for you, not the cold.
2 smokehouses now breathed against the valley cold, their amber glow a quiet answer to every rumor. Brian's first night in his own loft was warm enough to make him forget the years he spent burning money instead of wood.
The meat's curing faster than I ever managed. I called him crazy. He was just ahead.
In the general store, a few days later, Brian cleared his throat and spoke loud enough for every man to hear.
The smokehouse loft isn't a danger. It's the smartest thing built in this valley since the sawmill. William Reeves was right.
The room went quiet, years of ridicule collapsing into a single dusty silence. Then one grizzled farmer stepped forward and asked for a copy of the plans.
I'd rather share a bed plan than dig another frozen grave. Spread it.
Within a week, 3 more families had started framing their own lofts, the sound of hammers replacing the murmur of gossip. Brian's shop, once a symbol of stubbornness, now did enough business to pay off every debt the winter had piled on. The mockery that once chased William had burned off like morning fog, leaving only the quiet truth of what one man's stubborn warmth could build. The thaw came late but sudden. By mid-April, William stood at his woodpile and counted what the loft had spared.
Less than a cord all winter. And a larder full. Hannah wouldn't have believed it.
He walked the path to the graveyard, a small bundle of dried blooms cradled against his coat.
I made the cold work for me, Hannah. Just wish I'd thought of it before yours was the grave.
He laid the wild aster and goldenrod at the base of the cross, flowers kept alive by the loft's stolen warmth.
All these years blaming myself, but she'd want me to share this, not bury it with her.
Below, the valley carried the scars of a brutal winter, but now it also carried the thin, steady plumes of a dozen smokehouses. He stayed until the shadows lengthened, then walked back, no longer carrying the same weight in his chest. The smokehouse still breathed its amber glow against the twilight, no longer a desperate invention, just home.
I didn't beat the winter. I just finally gave it something it couldn't take.
By the first week of May, smokehouse lofts dotted the valley like new constellations. The sound of hammers had become the song of survival. The spring festival that year wasn't just a celebration, it was a reckoning. Tables groaned under slabs of smoked meat from a dozen new lofts. William stood at the edge of the square, a hand-rolled cigarette forgotten in his fingers, watching. Brian Caldwell, now the design's most unlikely champion, lifted a tin cup high over the crowd.
To the man who taught us that a fire could do 2 jobs, to William Reeves.
William didn't raise his own cup. He just nodded once, the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. Old man Sanders, whose children had grown plump, grabbed William's hand and wouldn't let go.
You saved us, Reeves. You and that cursed-smelling bed of yours.
The loft saved you. I just built it.
But the valley knew better. They had seen a man turn ridicule into a roof and cold into a cure. 5 winters later, an older William Reeves sat on a stool beside the smokehouse, his beard gone gray, a heavy wool coat draped over his shoulders.
The fire still holds. After all these years, the same bed, the same warmth.
The valley below was a quilt of glowing vents and drifting smoke, each one a testament to a lesson hard won.
I used to dread the first frost. Now, it just means the smokehouse runs a little longer.
Smoke billowed from the chimney, a slow, constant breath against the star-filled sky.
Hannah would have liked this sight. She never did trust a cold bed.
He lit a pipe with an ember from the stove vent, the sweet hickory smoke joining the plume overhead. The night settled around him, and for the first time in decades, the cold held no threat.
Let winter come. I've got a bed over the smokehouse, and that's the warmest place in this valley.
Above the loft, the chimney carried its amber glow upward, a silent signal that William Reeves had long since tamed the cold. On a crystalline morning, a familiar, stockier figure trudged up the ridge path, his breath crystallizing in the air.
Still sleeping above your ham, old man? I see the chimney's still puffing.
Coffee's on the vent. Get up here before my bed gets jealous.
They climbed the ladder, the old boards creaking with their shared years of memory.
This smell. I used to think it would choke me. Now it smells like money in the bank.
Smoke doesn't judge. It warms whatever's above it, whether it's a ham or a proud butcher.
My girls are married. My shop's out of debt. None of it happens if you'd turned me away that day.
You built your own ladder, Brian. I just showed you where the rungs go.
The valley won't forget who put the first bed above the smoke. That's your rung, and it's the highest.
The two men sat in the amber light, words no longer needed to fill what the smoke had already cured between them. Night fell like a blanket, and William climbed the old ladder one last time as an old man in his story.
The rungs feel heavier tonight, but the bed never does.
He settled onto the straw, the banked coals 2 feet below, sending a steady, living heat through the boards.
After all these years, the smoke still rises, and so does the heat. I broke the cold Hannah.
The memory of her frozen face had long since thawed into something softer, a presence, not a wound.
She'd sit up here if she could. Always said the smoke smelled like home.
The vent whispered with the night air, carrying the low crackle of the embers and the scent of hickory.
No more frozen graves. No more counting logs. Just this.
The rhythm of the smoke and the warmth pulled him down, and for the first time, sleep came without a single dream of winter. Outside, the smokehouse chimney carried its amber glow upward into the star-specked sky, a silent sentinel over the man who had built the warmest bed in the valley. Beyond the ridge, the valley slumbered under a quilt of winter stars, a cold so deep it creaked in the timber. In dozens of homesteads, thin columns of smoke rose from double-duty fires, each one a quiet act of defiance. No one counted logs anymore. The arithmetic had changed. 1 fire, 2 jobs, and the cold held at bay. The story had come full circle. Where once a man froze alone, now a valley slept warm. The genius wasn't in the lumber or the vent. It was in stealing warmth from work already done. And that lesson, forged in grief and smoke, now burned in every home from the ridge to the river. The valley didn't speak of William Reeves in grandiose tales. They just kept building, kept curing, kept sleeping above the smoke. And every time a new family lit their first double-duty fire, they unknowingly whispered his epitaph into the cold. Never again. The cold didn't leave the valley. It just lost its power. And in the warmest bed in the valley, an old man dreamed of nothing at all. The smokehouse glow caught the first hint of dawn, a stubborn ember against the retreating night. In 100 other homes, the same amber light rose through floorboards, an unspoken language of survival. No one recited William Reeves' name in the morning hush, but the smoke told his story for him. He didn't beat the winter. He just made the cold work for him. 1 fire at a time, a bed built above the smoke, a simple shift that turned a curse into a cure. The valley had learned that survival isn't about strength. It's about design, about trapping what's already there. Heat, smoke, intent, and refusing to let it escape. And so the humblest corner of the smokehouse became the warmest bed in the valley. And in that bed, an old man's legacy wasn't carved in stone, but in the thin, steady plumes that still climb from every chimney when the frost returns.